It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Divas That Care. My name is Candace Gish. If this is your very first time tuning into the Divas That Care, a huge welcome. We're listened to in over 30 countries, and it's because of our listeners, our guests, our hosts, everybody that's been a part of us that we are able to do this. So, thank you. Thank you for even just joining us today and checking us out, because we're very grateful for that. Today, I'm excited to welcome back Brianne Kuhn. Brianne, welcome. I'm so excited to chat with you again.
Yes, it's always a pleasure coming on this show.
Well, I love chatting with you because I'm always so inspired after our show, because I learn so much. And I always think, okay, I'm going to take that tip that I've learned from you, and I'm going to incorporate it into the things that I'm doing. So, thank you for, doing that and sharing so many things with us.
Of course. And, it really does set my soul on fire, sharing my little pieces of wisdom and everything that I've learned as being an entrepreneur and in my past careers, and just sharing that information with everyone else.
Well, we love it, and thank you so much. But before we dive into today's program, would you mind introducing yourself to our new listeners?
Of course. So like you said, my name is Brianna. I am a virtual business consultant and social media strategist, and I own my company. It's called Limitless Impact Virtual Management, and I help all kinds of businesses in all kinds of industries in all the places in the world be able to grow their business with as little growing pains as possible, and help them be able to achieve their goals and their dreams.
I love that. That is huge. A lot of us, we struggle with social media. There's so many things that are changing all the time. One of the things that you've really taught us on the Divas That Care is some different tips on how to navigate through all of this. And, you're always trying new things, and then you share it with us. And I'm always excited, like, okay, what has she tried now? What is she doing new? And how can we incorporate that into our lives? I know that today's topic, we're going to talk about setting and achieving some goals here. And I want to ask you, why is that an important topic?
Well, we are officially a month into 2022, and I always know, even for myself personally and professionally, when you come into the new year, it's very easy to, be inspired and motivated, and you write out your goals, or you just think of the different goals that you want to achieve this year. But usually the first month in, you get busy again with life, and you kind of sometimes put that on the back burner. So the reason why I wanted to talk about it today is because now that we are officially a month in, it's kind of a little bit of a check-in, as well as some tips on how to achieve or set realistic goals that are actually easier to achieve, but yet push yourself and your business further.
I really like that. I think that's a fantastic thing. A lot of our listeners, if you've been tuning into us, you know that I'm not a really big fan of New Year's resolutions, because I always want to know where I'm at, where I need to go. And so I really love it when I have the opportunity to chat with amazing entrepreneurs that are really assisting people out there. And I think it's really important too, because things have changed so much in the social media sphere. Where it's always evolving. There's always new social media platforms popping up, and I like how you're trying to really help people navigate based on what their needs are.
Yeah, and I'll touch on the fact that you're not a huge fan of New Year's resolutions, and neither am I. And really, the reason I think, for myself at least, I'm not a fan of it is really the word resolution, because it kind of insinuates that something was wrong. And, it's not necessarily wrong. It's just you're wanting to better yourself and grow yourself. So that's why I like using the word goal rather than resolution.
I love that too. I have goals, and I always talk about finding the different things, and I think I change my goals too throughout the year, so I don't just stick on one necessary pathway. I kind of adjust things based on what's happening.
Yeah, totally. And, even for myself, like I typically don't set my goals around the new year. I actually do it around my birthday, and my birthday's in May. And so typically what I do for myself personally and professionally is usually the week before my birthday, I have this little book and I sit there and kind of reflect on my past year, what's worked well, what hasn't really worked well, what are things that I want to do differently, what am I really proud of, what was my biggest accomplishment, what drained my energy the most. And that's how I kind of think about the different things that I want to do differently or grow on in the next year. And I write those things down. And it's actually proven that if you write your goals down, you're more likely to achieve them. And I won't look at that book for at least 6 months. I have it in a drawer, and I just kind of put it there and forget about it. It's not constantly in my face, reminding me, I need to do this, I need to do this. It's just kind of one of those things where I put that intention out there, I trust that it's going to happen, and then I'll look at it again in 6 months and see where I'm at.
That is great. That's kind of similar to like doing a vision board.
Yeah, and that's something that I find even when I was younger and in school and stuff like that. And, how they kind of teach us about setting goals is it's very aggressive. And they want you to constantly have it in front of your face of this thing that you need to achieve. And it puts a lot of pressure on you. And it can create burnout as well as stress. But you don't want to associate those things with trying to achieve a goal. So I've always tried to stay extremely positive about my goals and not put an insane amount of pressure on myself in order to achieve those goals. Especially because, for myself, I try to be extremely realistic with my goals, but I also give myself a couple that are, pushes me a little bit further. And even if I don't achieve it and I get pretty close, that's still a huge achievement.
So what kind of recommendations can you give our listeners today? I have a day timer that I have like little mini goals, like I mentioned. Is that something that you kind of mention to people? Instead of having like the big goals, can you put yourself into these smaller spots too?
Yeah. And, it's very different for each person. For yourself, for example, you use a day planner and you have your mini goals. And for some people, they're, completely digital, or, there's people who will put it on a sticky note and then put it on their bathroom mirror. Like there's so many different strategies. It's really about figuring out what works for you as well as what feels good for you. For myself, I don't want to have my goals constantly staring at me in the face, like reminding me that I need to do this. So that's why I write it down in a little book, and then I kind of just put it away. And then, it's in the back of my mind. I don't forget about it, but it feels so much more like an achievement when I come back 6 months and a year from now, when I go and look at it and like, holy crap, I was able to do every single one of those. And for the last 2 years, that's what I've done. And there's been maybe one or two that are kind of like my more, like reach for the moon sort of goals. That I've gotten really, really close to, but I didn't quite hit the mark. But every other one I've been able to achieve. So it's a huge moment of reflection for me where it's like, holy crap, like I was able to do this and I didn't put an insane amount of pressure on myself or stress in order to achieve those goals, because I naturally just allowed myself to do them.
Is this something that when you're talking with one of your clients, do you guys sit down and you strategize about that? Is this a candid conversation that you have with them?
Yeah. A lot of my clients that we are doing business development and, trying to figure out how to push their business forward, I kind of have like 2 steps that I start out with. Is I start by figuring out their vision. So what is important for their business? What does their business look like in 3 to 5 years for them? What are their biggest priorities? What do they like doing in their business? What do they not like doing in their business? So I kind of figure out those visions that they have, And then we review and reflect on their last year, last 6 months of their business, depending how long they've been in business, what has worked well for them, what hasn't, things that cause them a lot of stress. We look at their client feedback and stuff like that. And that's how we think about setting their goals for them, because they'll be able to actually action plan a lot of these goals. But also, too, it'll seem a lot more less overwhelming for them, because it's things that they've been wanting to do for a long time, but they just haven't pulled the trigger or didn't know where to take the first step. So doing it this way, I find, is a lot more manageable when it comes to goal setting.
Which makes a lot of sense, because I think when you start doing the stuff that you help people implement with social media, and I think people do automatically get completely overwhelmed because they're thinking, oh my goodness, what if I do this wrong? What if I lose customers instead of gain customers? And it's very stressful, but you're really trying to take that stress out of their lives.
100%. And, I'm sure everyone has probably heard the term, make your goals SMART. And it's, you spell out SMART, and it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So it is kind of one of those fundamental things that people talk about when it comes to goal setting. And for myself, it does make sense to kind of follow that. But I'm also very kind, I guess you could say, to myself, my business, as well as how I set my goals. And it's not that I'm just setting these little goals that I know that I'm going to achieve no matter what sort of thing. It's, they're kind of like in a video game where you get to a certain point in the level and it's like a checkpoint, and then it saves your progress so that if you fail the next mission, you don't have to start all the way from the beginning again. You could just go back to that checkpoint. That's how I kind of think of it is, so when you throw yourself at these really, really big goals and you don't necessarily achieve it that year, but you had all of these little ones along the way, you don't feel like you're starting back from square one. You can see that you've made all of this progress and it wasn't all for nothing.
I think more people need to see it that way, because I truly think people, if they have a failure, they think they've lost everything and they haven't accomplished anything. But you're really showing people, no, it's not that way. And I just really like how you made that analogy. My girls are all gamers. So they're constantly talking about, okay, the save points. And it's kind of one of those things that you hear all the time, but it makes sense.
Yeah. And, and it's so cliche because, everyone's heard the quote, shoot for the moon, but if you miss the moon, you're still, you still land among the stars. But, it is extremely true. And that's why when I do this process with my clients, we usually will set maybe one or two really big goals, but we set multiple little ones and we track them. And, I use a program called Trello, and it's kind of like an online bulletin board where we can brain dump everything and just store it in there so stuff doesn't get lost in email and whatnot. But it's a really nice project management tool because you're able to see your progress. And after a certain amount of time, you can look back and be like, holy crap, we've done a lot. And,
wow,
that's a really good feeling.
I can see that. And we definitely need that encouragement. I think as women business owners too, a lot of our listeners, we thrive that way. If we can see something that we've done positive, and it's that positive reinforcement is such a great thing. So if you can show your clients that, I think that's a win-win for both of you.
100%. I thrive when I see my clients thriving and pushing their business forward. And I love sharing the success stories of my clients because, not just because it shows that I'm doing a good job, but it's look at these powerful entrepreneurs making it. Our society right now, there's a lot of conflict and the economy is, a little shaky. So it's nice kind of not focusing on that and seeing the success that people are having.
I love that. Celebration. I'm all about the celebration of one another. So, Brianna, do you have any tips for our listeners? Something that, or do you know what's happening in social media that maybe our listeners can take advantage of?
Yeah, well, even for myself right now, being in Canada, there's a lot of activity on social media right now, and I don't want to talk about politics, but kind of the thing that I'm doing right now is there's so much noise with current events that I'm kind of taking a little bit of a step back and just allowing those current events to have their moment. And, I have my opinions. We all have our opinions and viewpoints on what's going on, but it's really important as business owners to be very cautious of what you say online. Cancel culture is still very prevalent. So one of the things I recommend right now is just be cautious of what you post, what you say. I'm not trying to censor you or anything like that, but I know we can all get emotional and in the moment and stuff like that. But once you put it out there, it's very hard to take it back.
I like that advice. I think that's very important. So, Brianna, what's new with you? Is anything else going to be happening in the near future here?
Well, I am working away. I've got quite a few new clients here that have decided to take the plunge and do the big, overhaul of their business. So we are, down in the dirt and getting to it. So focusing on that. So I'm really excited to see the progress that I have with my clients in the next couple months. That's kind of like my bread and butter, and that's what I live for every day is when a business owner comes to me and they're like, I need help, and they want to completely transform their business. And so I've been focusing on that and just really enjoying life and being kind to myself and doing the things that I love and spending time with the people that I love. And
I think that's really important, and I really appreciate you sharing that with our listeners. And, what a great time to do an overhaul like you're kind of mentioning with some of your clients there. I think that's a great thing. A lot of people are, it's a great time for transition. So many things that are coming out of the world today that I think are really positive, and why not take the plunge and take the chances? Brianna, how can our listeners get a hold of you if they're interested in taking the plunge?
Well, you can reach out to me on social media at Limitless Impact, or you can visit my website at limitlessimpact.ca and fill out the contact form, and we can set up a discovery call, see where you're at in your business and what I can do to help.
Perfect. I will be posting all of your social media stuff after our show also, Brianna. And I'm hoping that Brianna and I will be doing some more collaborations here in the future. Hopefully some exciting things will happen. We will keep you guys all tuned. Stay tuned for that. All right, Brianna. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you're extremely busy. We always appreciate you on the Divas That Care, and I can't wait to chat with you again soon.
Yes, thank you as always. It's an absolute pleasure sharing, all my tips and tricks that I've learned since the last episode. And we'll see you again or talk to you again in the future.
Yes, we will definitely be doing that. For all of our listeners, if you haven't had a chance to check out any of Brianna's shows, they are recorded and they are all located on the Divas That Care network here at divasthatcare.com. As I said, I'm going to be posting today's show and all of her social media, but make sure you check out all of her past shows. There's some really, really great ones out there. Again, I want to say thank you to my amazing guest, Brianna, for continuing to come on to the Divas That Care network, and to all of our amazing listeners that have been with us for the last 11 years. Oh my gosh, it has been so long. It's been so great. We have so many great things happening. And I'm going to do a big plug because tomorrow is going to be our 12th anniversary. But we're also releasing an anthology tomorrow, which I'm really excited about, Animal Prints on My Soul, and you're not going to want to miss that. It's amazing. A lot of our guests that have been on our program are a part of that anthology, and we're just so proud to be able to have amazing people in our tribe and that we're able to support them in as many ways as we can. So thank you again to Brianna. Thank you to all of our listeners. Please do something kind. Until next time, everyone.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.